Welcome, everybody, to If I May, a podcast with me, Brent, an average guy, along with three of my average friends, Kyle, Dylan, and Nick. This episode, we're going to talk about woodworking, including slide rulers. What are they? I don't know still. We're going to talk about homonyms, words that sound the same. Polish, polish, who knows? And we talk about the Kentucky Derby. Big DQ happening. Lots to get into that, as well as our annual or our episodal Game of Thrones discussion.
You might say.
This is episode 47. This is the intro as well. Let's go.
What I want to start with, just a simple question for you guys. You all had shop class in middle school, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And the reason I'm asking is I don't know if shop is still a commonly taught thing. Yes, Brent, you're familiar with the schools, and I guess Kyle, your wife is as well. Do they still teach that kind of thing in major schools?
I would assume
as
so.
Woodworking?
As
well,
far
I know
as
in high school, they did. At least at our high school, they did.
in
I don't think it was like a
BVSD, they're starting to try to do a geometry class that's like geometry and construction all in one, which I can see where they're going with the whole comboing geometry with actually having to assemble a house and, shapes and whatnot. But from the tech ed teacher that I helped with their first robotics team, he thinks it's a good idea for a class. It's just the execution's so hard to get everything in, because basically you have to get a full geometry class and a full construction class into one class period.
I've got an interesting question since we're talking about school. Did you guys ever have where you get taught how to use like a slide rule, like on an actual desk with a piece like different size pencils, and you actually have to draw stuff? It's not on the computer.
Yes.
I didn't. I didn't take those kind of classes. I don't even think I know what a slide rule is.
Basically, it's like you have two wires going vertically on your desk. Your desk is at an angle, and it's basically a giant ruler that goes the entire width of your desk, and you can slide it up and down to give you a perfectly square surface that you can adjust. And then you use different size triangles, and different patterns that you need to be able to draft, and that way you are making sure that you're perfectly square.
So I think, unless I'm confusing slide rule with something else, I thought slide rule was the back in the day calculator that's literally like a sliding ruler to help you calculate things.
Abacus is what you're thinking of. The old school calculator that has all the little wooden beads that go along.
Nope.
Either string.
Nope. I'm talking about a slide rule. If you watch the movie
slide rule, and I know what you're talking about
Apollo
now.
13.
And it's a pair. What is this called? I'm looking up right now.
While Dylan's looking that up, to answer the question, yes, I was in Tesla Engineering Charter School growing up in my high school. So with that program, it was a Project Lead the Way program. We had a small portion of one of our intro classes be about how to actually draw by hand. But as far as that being a standard in the engineering field, no. Nobody does anything by hand nowadays except for simple sketches, to get concepts together, except for maybe industrial designers. But that's...
Well, this one... So this was more for it was an architecture class. So basically it was drafting, but you're drawing houses, buildings, everything was in 2D from top down. And then they taught you basically kind of like where 3D, where you have your three different angles. They taught us how to draw out in three different viewpoints of something. So you'd have a top down view. So basically it was kind of like our regular draft paper that you'd have. But this is we're actually drawing it with rulers and a pencil. So you're actually writing it out. Nowadays, you're right, everything's online. So when I was taking the class, the first half of the class was in pencil and using your desk, and it's basically just teaching you the fundamentals of what drafting is all about. And then the second half of the class was all online, and you're using your 3D modeler, and you're basically drawing out a giant house. So they kind of give you a both of old school and what's new technology coming out.
I think it's always important to be able to draw out your ideas, especially in 3D. just because it's so much easier to quickly convey that to somebody, anybody, like what your idea is. So I think the skill of being able to draw in 3D, and especially visualizing that in your head, to be able to like figure out how you need to draw it in order to get the 3D right, definitely super important to be able to convey your ideas effectively as an engineer anyway.
Especially as an engineer.
So question for you guys real quick. Well, I guess Nick, go ahead since I don't want to bail out with a new question, but
right. I just the context of why I asked the first question that kind of took us on this string, and ironically, I'll note that my future wife is an engineer, but she struggles with spatial visualization. And now, granted, I am not the best describer of things, for lack of a better terminology, but the reason I brought this up or brought up the shop class stuff is I am looking at building myself a desk for my at-home office. And I have some initial plans for the desktop, and I've gone out and bought the lumber, and I need to look at the lumber and see what I can actually use of the lumber. It does need to be ripped down to straighten the edges to give me all the pieces that are actually workable. But I have the lumber. I'm really looking forward to it, and I want to figure out what it's going to look like once I'm done ripping it, so that I can measure out, okay, where am I at? Do I need more? Do I have more than enough? How do I want to make this thing look at this point in time? But I'm building this desk, and I'm pretty excited because I haven't had a building project in quite some time that I actually wanted to do well. The last one I did well was my hunting blind. The last project I had, period, was I built a little TV stand that nothing fancy. It's just a couple boxes with a shelf on top that worked for my prior house that I rented with Megan. But the desktop I'm attempting to build now, I'm just curious experience are with building. I know you guys were Eagle Scouts and have certainly done building of some variety, whether that's bird houses or Pinewood derby cars or whatever it is that the cool kids do. I don't know. I'm not in on that kind of thing. But
so I would say for myself, my dad was super into woodworking and whatnot, and so was my grandpa. So I was naturally around woodworking stuff from as old, once I was old enough that my dad trusted me with a hand drill or something like that. So I've been always I'm always comfortable with wood. I know Brent, per his Eagle Scout project, makes a mean birdhouse, and also the most colorful Pinewood Derby car.
Yeah, I actually want to say my latest project, and I did this as I moved to Seattle. This is my now level living in a one-bedroom apartment of what I do woodworking. Was as I moved here, I actually went to the IKEA store and got a desk, and I actually assembled that whole thing on my own.
Whoa.
That's pretty big.
No,
that's pretty
way.
Good, Brent.
I basically built it by hand, is how it felt.
Like Brent put together his first Lego set.
You know what's kind of funny is in manufacturing, a lot of times you source all these electronic parts from different countries, bring them into America. You put it all into a box, and then you put a "Made in the USA" sticker on it. It's like,
really?
I mean, we kind of just put it together, but yeah, we'll take it.
Take the credit. Yeah, my desk though is not nearly as fancy as Nick's will be. That's
Nick. So, what was your question? I know you're at, what is our experience working with wood, or you're asking about desks? What? I don't understand what your question was.
Yeah, kind of broadly looking at what are your building experiences? Do you have positive stories? I guess Brent, we have those birdhouses now, and Kyle, I guess I've talked to a little bit on the side regarding his experience and different things he knows based on his family, and they're having previously or often working with wood. So what I'm looking for is just advice, and not necessarily talking through every detail right now because I don't have it all figured out. But have you ever taken on a project of this magnitude? Do you have experience going to lumber yards to pick out lumber to then have to rip down to go through this whole process? And just looking for, if you have experience with it, what was your experience like? What did you struggle with a little bit? Right now, I'm doing a ton of research on YouTube, watching all kinds of really fancy woodwork, and it's inspirational stuff. It's really fun to watch, and a lot of the personalities who do it are very entertaining, very engaging. And the other thing I guess there's a couple of notes as I'm going through and watching all these YouTube videos. Number one, they have every tool on the planet, and you don't need to have every tool to do all the work, but of course it's a lot easier or faster if you have the right tool. Now I need to figure out the balance of, okay, what tools do I need? Or
right tool versus the expense of that tool. You want to get bang for your buck, especially starting off woodworking.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not going to be building furniture every weekend or doing anything crazy like that. But I do want to build up as a man who is somewhat of a, I want to pretend to be masculine.
So manly, so masculine.
Part of my masculine
he made a desk.
Identity is being able to build things and work with wood. No pun intended. But it's something I perceive to that a man should be able to do and should, maybe even enjoy doing. Like, you don't have to. If it's not your thing, no big deal. But I do enjoy it. I worked at Home Depot in high school, not because I loved pushing carts, but I got the opportunity to work in the lumber department. And I love the smell of the wood, and I love the idea that you can just take these materials and create something. And I have very limited experience in a lot of ways, but I grew up in a neighborhood that was developing, and I would go play in all the new construction houses, and I would look at everything they were doing and climb in the rafters and do everything you're not supposed to do as a kid. But I loved it, just being around construction. Now, I was never inspired to go into a career for that because my family said that there's not a whole lot of money in construction unless you own it. So I've avoided it as far as a career path. But as far as a personal hobby, I love the idea of working with wood, and I'm going to be taking on this desk project over hopefully not too much more than the next couple of weeks, but just looking to gauge our panel here, if there's a lot of experience, if I need to look elsewhere for help, or what level you guys are on.
Well,
I'm going to start off
Go ahead, Brian.
by saying I want to say I think that going on YouTube is a really phenomenal way to start, and there's a lot of skills now that you can learn, whether it's woodworking or cooking or really whatever you want to do, you can learn on YouTube or just searching the internet. So I think that's a really cool resource to bring out. And I'm sure that if someone did not make a video of what you're exactly looking for, you should make it and we can put it on the Zarya Bus YouTube. But no, I don't have much other advice besides good work.
The way I feel about woodworking is as long as you know different tools, then you can pretty much build anything as long as you have enough creativity and patience. And obviously there's some like little tips and tricks and stuff like that, but I feel like, yeah, like I said, once you know how to use the different, it's basically just measure, cut, plane, sand, like, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, that's a good point. Really, the couple tips for generic woodworking. Number one, if you're designing your own thing, know that wood thickness isn't what they necessarily say it is. So that's if a 2x4 isn't 2x4, it's what is it, like 3/4 by 1.5 or something like that. Like 1 3/4. You get like an extra 1/4 inch, something like that on each side. It does make sense for construction because it adds up to the correct amount of spacing for certain construction features, but it's not as intuitive for the standard person. And
were you aware of the lawsuit against Home Depot and other major vendors of construction materials for amateurs? There was a lawsuit because customers who don't know anything about construction or the history of it were saying they were getting cheated by these organizations, saying they bought a 2x4 that wasn't 2 inches by 4 inches. And I don't remember the result of that case, but that was a case that went to court.
Well, I would say with the, I guess going back to the woodworking in general, like, yeah, I guess if those are people that haven't been around woodworking, they just don't get it, I guess. But for other tips, like Dylan said, really 80% of your work can be done with like a 20% of the total tools out there. And you need to measure, you need to cut and sand. Those are your main three things, and then we'll throw in drilling. So really, you need a good tape measure, you need Ideally a powered, like if you're getting your first drill, just go get a corded drill. Don't mess with the cordless ones because that could potentially just discourage you, especially if you're just doing a home project in the garage where you don't need to worry about extension cording on top of a roof or something like that. And then cutting, you can just get a simple, there's a bunch of different wood saws out there that are just, it's the classic one you've seen online where it's just that giant saw that, if you Google wood saw, that's the saw you need. And then just some sandpaper. They make some variety packs on Amazon that are like $2-3, and you get from 60 grit all the way to like 300 grit, which is plenty that you would, that's the biggest range you would really need for most woodworking. As far as the other major tip I can give you is wood glue is stronger than regular glue or regular just wood itself. So if you have a damaged something, in general, you just want to fill it with wood glue. And the screw it together is really just to help hold the wood glue together, like wood glue and like be a clamp. The screws don't really do much compared to the wood glue. So, a couple mini pro tips.
I'll jump in. My one observation from all the YouTube research I've done, which of course is not official, but as of right now, the number one thing you need to be successful in working with wood in any capacity, you need to have clamps, and not a set of clamps. I mean, you need to have
like 10 of
clamps, like
different sizes,
stupid numbers of clamps, different sizes.
4 of each size is what you want.
Clamps, wood glue, screws.
I'm looking at how to build this desktop, and I think I counted in one example of a very nice desktop that I'm kind of modeling mine after in a way. I counted 19 clamps across this desktop, and I about lost my mind. I'm like, I think on our wedding registry we have a set of clamps, but I'm like,
I'm gonna need 2 more sets,
3 to 5 more sets, because I need to get it, because I wanted to use 2x10s initially, which I don't think I'll be able to do based on the lumber I got, but I wanted to use bigger boards. So in order to clamp those effectively and ultimately to clamp the final product of a tabletop, I need to be able to cover the full 30 inches, which is the depth I want of that tabletop. So a set wouldn't even do it. I need 19 or so of the biggest clamps.
No, in general, you can get away with about 4. Obviously, if you're making something huge, it's slightly different. But if you're making most woodworking things, you need about 4 of each sized clamp. You need 4 of those long ones, the like 3-4 foot ones, 3 of them that are like a foot long, and then 3 like smaller ones for joints and, that are only like, 6 inches maximum, something like that. So you need like 4 of each size up to whatever size you're dealing with.
The question to pose here, if you could build anything out of wood, what would your dream build be? Would you be building a house? Would you be building a shack? Would you be building your own furniture, a rocking chair, a canoe? Build if you could build anything and money wasn't an option.
Oh, I know what I'd build.
Not in the sense of just, I'm going to take a house because it's the most expensive, but what would you enjoy most? What would you take pride in if you were to build something? Let's start with Brent.
If I could build anything, I would build a spaceship.
Out of wood?
No, out of wood. It's not realistic. but you did say anything. But no, if I was I always thought
you could. It could be a model.
Oh, my, maybe.
Yeah, the next person, I feel insulted by that answer.
No. I have a serious answer. I thought of a funny.
I spaceship.
I thought of a
building
funny.
Hilarious, Brent.
Thank you.
I thought it was funny.
Building a canoe from hand, like one of those where you take the full log and you.
That does sound super cool.
I know some people. I know a friend in high school did that, and I think her and her dad, like, they made one for every member of the family. Like, they would work together and build like a canoe for everyone, and it just sounded like a really cool process. It takes a long time, but like a birch bark canoe would be a really cool thing to make, and a lot of fun to take out. No, it's just a spring sprung.
You smack something. Okay.
Bing. No, I didn't do anything. No, I think that's what I would do.
This music brought to you by Brent.
I'm playing the spring.
Take this moment of silence.
Kyle, what would you build?
I did, like when Nick said the canoe idea, that did sound super awesome. Like that would be really cool to have your own like canoe that you've made out of hand. I mean, houses, I've done construction stuff before. It's not, I mean, you put up 2x4s in a wall. It's not really that exact of a science. In most cases, I'm sure there's contractors that, I guess from my experience, I'm like building shacks up north, that kind of thing, right? So
the professionals probably have it.
Yeah, I'm sure the professionals have much better ways of doing things, and right now it's becoming, they have more and more aluminum studs instead of wood studs, but that's a different story. But yeah, I think something like that people interact with would be super cool. Like one thing that comes to mind, and I literally just thought of it when this conversation was brought up, is potentially like when Juliana and I decide to have a kid, it might be kind of cool to make like the crib myself. Like that sounds like a cool thing to do, is make your own kid's crib. Like, and I could engineer the crap out of it so that I can like expand and lengthen and become a legit bed at some point. At least for like, up to toddler range kind of thing.
That's interesting.
I need a house for that though, because there's no way I can fit all the woodworking tools I would need in an apartment.
Right. If I were to build anything, I think I'd want to build like a timber frame tiny home. So a timber frame is where you like basically you have your main frame of the house fit together like a puzzle, and you don't actually use anything to like attach them to one another. Basically, you have like notches cut out of the frame pieces, and then they kind of slide in like a puzzle to one another. So it's an old Japanese style of building. I think it'd be super cool to build a tiny home in that style.
So a lot of times with like woodworking, one of the final steps is to do some polishing, and I don't know what these words are called, and I don't even care if I need to know what they're called, but polish and Polish are spelled exactly the same, mean two very different things, but they're spelled the same, and they're pronounced differently as well, and it really bothers me. And another one is wind versus wind. Like Brent had a topic that he wrote down, was something like track starting to wind down. I'm like, Brent, you spelt wind wind. And he's like, no, Kyle, it's that's also wind. So that bothers me, that two words, two very different meanings, two different pronunciations spelled the same. I don't know what these are called, but it bothers me.
Well, that's the thing that when you're trying to learn English is so confusing to a lot of people.
As a 27-year-old, it's very confusing.
No, but if you're like someone if I'm trying to learn Spanish, I don't think they have nearly as many words that mean different things that are the exact same spelling. So when you're trying to like learn English, I think that's one of the things that people you hear like, oh, it's really challenging because of what you said, like where wind and wind, like how do you know which one's which? And if you grew up with it, well, then you know context, you've used it in your daily language. But if it's the first time, like you've only seen wind, and then they're like, oh, and then you wind up the hand of the clock, and they'll just be like,
what? It's wound.
Wound.
God,
you wind it up. You wind it up. I mean, I guess the sentence.
Wound would be past tense.
Yes, true. But I think that's one of the things that is really
I winded up it.
I winded it down.
I bet there's a name for it though. Should look this up.
Right?
Yeah, it's called.
Well, that's a good point though. About like different languages, like do you guys all take different? Like, what languages do you guys take in high school / college? I guess for me personally, I did nothing in high school. I took 2 years of German in middle school, and because I did nothing in high school, I had to take 2 semesters of German in college. And I should have just taken Spanish or something that I'd actually potentially use in real life, because German is not something I'm ever going to use again.
I took 3 years of German in middle school, and all 4 years of German in high school, and I got a German minor in college. And honestly, like, I haven't used German since.
Exactly. It's like German, like, because my ancestors are German, it seemed like they're like, pick a language. I'm like, I don't really want to do Spanish. Everybody does Spanish, and French seems pretty useless, and so does Latin. I'm not becoming a doctor or anything, so I'll go with German. Yeah, it was pretty useless. As some people like from Wisconsin, like that's obviously what we like.
we had Spanish classes, and I'd be like, why am I taking Spanish? There's no one here that speaks Spanish.
When I
And
came out,
Like, I understand the draw for German, but it's been useless to me. It was a bad decision
like
on
if
my
anything,
part.
that we had like Norwegian people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, when I wish I would have taken Spanish, but I took French, and it wasn't. I mean, it could be
It's
helpful.
like, that's
if I
even worse
really
than
learned
German,
it.
I think. Like, nobody
No,
in America
it's
speaks
pretty
French.
close. But there is Quebec, which is Canada, which is they speak like
Oh,
Montreal,
okay,
that whole
Canada.
area.
Yep, you're right.
So they do speak French. It's a little bit closer, at least to Wisconsin. But I came out here, and the school I was at last week, they had a class that for the first part of the day they spoke English, and then the second half of the day the teacher taught everything in Spanish. So I came in, and it was a class full of Spanish speakers, and I thought, if I had a Spanish background, I could relate to this class so much better. But I didn't take it, and Spanish is one of those languages, especially having taken trips down to Costa Rica and Dominican Republic, that I wish I would have spent time to learn. I'm very lucky that Heather knows Spanish, so when I go down on these trips, I have a kind of a translator in there, and that's made it a lot easier to actually do a lot of the more things besides just the very
Like,
stuff.
I know in Mexico they love it when people try to at least speak Spanish. Like, it's like I don't know if it's just funny for them because Americans fail, or they literally appreciate you trying to speak their language. But when I went down to Mexico, it was like, I don't want to, like, I know sí. That's about it. No habla English or español. I have no Spanish.
I had Heather teach me one phrase. I was like, we go to a restaurant, I want to be polite, and we had a little bit extra food that we want to take home. So I asked Heather, like, how do you say, can I have a box, please? And it's like, podemos una caja, por favor. And I go up to the counter, and I'm all ready
Good thing
to
you
say
didn't try
it,
to ask for a doggy
it.
bag. They're like, oh my God, you savage.
You want a bag for the dog? No. So I go up and ask, and basically the person was like, huh? And I just like shot my confidence. I'm like, I thought I had it, but I must have just
and the guy's like, dude, just speak English.
And then, well, it was one of those like native restaurants. They called sodas down in Costa Rica. And I went to say it, and I said it, and Heather's like, you said it right. He just didn't hear you. I'm like, you just say it. It shot my confidence, but I shot my shot. It didn't.
You gave it a try. Give it the old Spanish try.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to go quick back to the homonym, or the words that have the same word or spelling.
Did you say homina?
They're called homonyms.
Homina.
They're called homonyms.
Is there another way to say that?
I'm sure there is.
There's got to be, like, homonyms has got to be another word that has another meaning somewhere as well.
And think about this, though. If you're trying to learn English, bow has 5 different words. You could do bow as in like a tree limb, or bow as in front of a boat, or bow as in bow at the waist, or bow that you tie with ribbons, or bow and
tree
arrow.
bow.
There's like a bough of a tree. There's basically,
I feel like bow of the tree's got to be like
B-O-W,
BAU or something like that.
That's not even saying bow wow,
Bow.
like how dogs speak. I mean, it's just try learning that and being, it's hard enough learning one word, but to have it mean so many different things.
Where did bow wow come from for a dog? I get wolf because number one, there's wolves, and number one, it kind of sounds like that, like woof. Like, I get that one. I don't get bow wow. I don't think I've ever
Little
heard a
bow
dog.
wow.
I've never heard a dog where I'm like, oh, he just bow wowed at me.
Yeah, I don't know where they came from. Little bow wow. That's gotta be it. So speaking of dogs, we can finally talk about animals now. And I want to talk about that Kentucky Derby. Maximum Security thought he was going to be in the winner's circle, but instead he's in jail. No, not quite. But he did get disqualified. First time ever in the Kentucky Derby that a horse got qualified from the race. You look at the replay, there's one camera angle that you see that's like, yeah, okay, he definitely obstructed. But it seems fishy. Like, and it's hard when it's one of those things where it's so much money is on the line with betting.
I don't know if disqualified is the right word.
He was
disqualified.
He was disqualified. He at least got pushed down to 16th.
I'm looking at the standings right now. Maximum Security
You
So
definitely
Maximum
did not.
Security is spinoff and Gray Magician. Now I'm wondering if they also got
Dude,
disqualified.
wait, pause. Can you please just read through all the names? Because some of these
Sure.
horses are always fantastic names.
Yeah, so first is Country Horse, then the second
Lame.
is Code of Honor, third Tactus, which I think that's from Spartacus, isn't it? I think pretty sure.
It's a good name.
Fourth, Improbable. Yeah, Tactus was like
Improbable.
yeah, and then Game Winner was fifth. Then sixth was Master Fencer. Seventh was Will of War. Eighth was Plus Q Parfait.
Wait, what?
Plus Q Parfait.
All one word, or is that 3 words?
No, 3 words, and it's obviously French. Ninth is Win Win Win. 10th, cutting humor. 11th, by my standards. 12, Vekoma, which I think that was like the one Japanese bred horse, I think. 13th was Bod Express. I'm not sure. 14th was Tax.
Just
15th,
TAX?
Yeah, yep, just
Okay.
TAX, Tax.
Okay.
15th was Roadster. 16th was Long Range Toddy. 17th was Maximum Security. 18th was Spinoff. 19th was Gray Magician. And then down below, didn't even race, was Omaha Beach and Heikel.
Omaha!
What is it? Will of War or Will to War?
War of Will.
War of Will must be like the most disappointing horse.
I think no.
Like a
Brent.
That sounds like a winning horse name.
The obvious loser of a horse is win in 9th place.
That's true. No, you know that horse is gonna lose because the owner's like, "Come on, win!"
You're right.
And it just never does it.
It would sound awesome if he actually was winning, though. He'd be like, win is winning. Win, won. That does have a lot of potential.
It does have potential. No, if you name a horse like with something that majestic, you got to have a winning horse. You know, War Admiral, the great horse War Admiral. Like that's a horse
Grey Wizard, or whatever it was.
I don't know. Grey Wizard invokes the same fear as Secretariat or War Admiral or Will of War. You know, like. I bet he's actually related to War Admiral, though. I bet if you look.
How'd you guys feel about them taking down Maximum Security?
I do not follow horse racing at all. I think if I was in Kentucky or something closer to it, I could see going to one, but I think it would be more like baseball, where it's like, I don't mind going and watching with people, and like, you know, I'll throw $50 on some random funny horse names and just if it happens, it happens. But I don't think I can, because this is the big one. I don't mind watching the highlight on YouTube or where it cuts straight to it, but there's no way I'm watching that live and caring that much.
Oh, live is really cool.
No, I did. I watched it live.
Proud of you.
So my thought about it is when I first heard the news that the top horse got disqualified, I'm like, that's really ticky-tack. Like, that seems really dumb. Let the winner win, and could have been that bad. And you watch the video at first, it's like, it doesn't really look like anything happened. But then I was thinking about it, and from like a track perspective, having coached track, and when you're doing a distance race, a lot of times you might try and pass someone. And if you go and pass them, you can't interrupt their stride. Like you can't just go and cut right in front of somebody where it slows them down. I mean, it's basically a penalty. It's just not.
That's how they're looking at it too.
He definitely did cut all the way across
that,
like 3 lanes.
Yeah, once I thought about that, it was like, well, yeah, you can't just impede someone's running. Like I'm like, it's not quite as ticky-tack as I thought. Like,
and it's dangerous for
Absolutely.
horses to be doing that, to be cutting each other off like that. Like,
yeah, because these horses are literally bred.
I watched it live.
They're bred to just go. They don't
forward.
They don't fully understand stop sometimes.
No, they're not. So I'm glad there was no big accident. I actually really support that they DQ'd him. I mean, the rider got an unfair advantage from pulling out and cutting people off, and
wasn't that horse like undefeated too?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he was clearly the best horse there. He would have won, I think, regardless.
He was pretty far ahead of everyone.
I think the jockey let him get away from him.
He basically cut off everyone. Cut off the first couple people in like turn. Was it the last turn?
There's only 2 turns.
Okay, well, there's technically 4.
Last turn. Yeah, there's a last turn.
Anyways, that like right before the last straight stretch, like he obviously cut off the other racers, and then by the time they went across the line, he was at least one horse length in front of the others. Like he was clearly the faster horse.
And I think the crazy thing is the ripple effect it had on the whole race. Like they placed him at 17th because they thought that 1 to 16 all had their races
affected
thrown
by
off by this one move.
Oh my god!
Kind of like the whole domino.
There's
That
no
I don't know how to
way.
determine that quite as much, but that's what they came up with. So it sucks for the whole team, and they didn't appeal, and it's getting.
You finally get back to the one person that's
decline.
like, no, dude, I'm not going to be that petty to move up another spot. Hey,
Yeah.
number 2, were you affected?
can
Oh, yeah, I
have-
was affected. Number 3, were you affected? Oh, definitely. All the way down. Finally, number 17. He's the real mature one here. He's like, no, like, there's nothing. No, he did not affect my race.
I'm not getting any more money regardless if I'm 16
Yeah,
or
right.
17. Like, it doesn't matter. We're first.
Kyle,
first,
the
second, third.
dude that actually got cut off, the person that's now in second place or whatever, never even playing. He's the one that got cut.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you have to repeat that again. You cut off a little bit for me.
The one horse that actually like physically got cut, they didn't file a report. It was everyone else behind him.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, that's class, I think.
Yeah.
No, I just hate seeing something
I think especially
marred
if you-
with a DQ.
Right? It's
There's
always that
gonna be an
asterisk.
asterisk.
Yep.
You didn't actually win it. You took second. You weren't the fastest horse. You just yeah, and that's what I don't like about it. I mean, we had a Triple Crown winner last year, so we can't be that spoiled.
I say,
but-
do those horses just triple crown and then don't touch anything? Like, are they just done,
They just
retired
breed
after
for-
that?
They just
They
breed
might
for the
do
rest of their
one-
life.
They might do one more.
Is there any such thing as a double triple crown winner, or do they
No,
just
you
literally they
can't.
win it once?
It's
we
only
can't-
for I believe 3-year-old horses. So
Oh, you can only win it 1 year.
yeah, it's only the 3 races that make up the Triple Crown, the Kentucky Derby, Preakness, and
So
Belmont.
you'll never see a
Stakes
repeat
are-
horse.
No, you can't. It's
Ah.
only, but that's how they know about them is because they do race as 2-year-old. So they're like the horse that got DQ'd. Maximum Security does have a racing record. He's probably raced a few times prior to the Triple Crown when he was 2.
Would he have been triple crown if he won that one, or is this like the first one?
First of them.
Oh, okay.
If that was the last race and he got DQ'd like that, and that was his Triple Crown bid,
Oh boy.
that would
Oh,
be
boy.
drama. Oh boy, we would be talking about this longer. But enough horses. That was a good conversation about. I find it really cool. When we first started podcasting, we talked about, I believe, Kentucky Derby.
We did
But-
at one point. We talked about the triple crowner.
I mean, so we're about a year. This has actually been really close to like the year anniversary of us podcasting. We've come a long way.
Well, if it's not now, happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to us.
Happy freaking birthday, boys. Yeah.
We missed a
You guys
couple
want to
weeks.
jump into
Actually,
next segment?
yeah. What do you got, Dylan?
I think we should start talking about Game of Thrones.
I think so
Ooh,
too.
Do we
I'm
have Do we
ready.
have a lot of time in Game of Thrones? It is. We're about 40 minutes in.
We do.
Well,
we can
that's what
talk
I'm
about
saying.
this for
We-
20 minutes.
Okay, let's do it.
Plus, we've been
We
going
just
for like
haven't
an hour
heard
and
Nick
40.
talk in a while, and I want to hear him talk about Game of Thrones because
Oh, yeah.
I know that there's a lot of controversy about this one.
Plus, there is.
There's a lot of controversy. Brent, you want to lead this one off? I guess
I can.
you want to do the quick episode recap.
Yeah. So the episode, as I witnessed it, started off with a party that went, in my opinion, a little bit too long. It was cool seeing some of the interactions. Like, well, there was a touching scene, right, about the
Gendry.
funeral pyre,
Oh,
and
okay.
everyone died, and I was like, "That's really cool."
Spoiler alert, by the way, if you have not fully caught up.
Oh gosh, yeah,
With
I'm jumping ahead.
Season 8, Episode 4. You might want to stop the podcast now. This will be our last topic for the day. So, spoiler alert. Brent, please continue.
So I found it really interesting that they start off with a funeral session for the fallen comrades. It didn't look like there were nearly enough bodies for what Carnage should have been,
I
but
had the same feeling.
they explain that you can only buy so many like davers or whatever. So whatever. And John gives a beautiful speech, which I also thought was strange. Like, yes, John's the leader of the North, but shouldn't the queen of the Seven Realms, if she wants to be known as that, give this rousing speech? She didn't. It was kind of a missed opportunity for her, in my opinion. And then they celebrate and get really drunk because they won, even though a lot of their friends died.
So they didn't really start loosening up. Sorry, we can get into this later.
Yeah, no, go for it.
They didn't really start loosening up until after the Gendry scene, which I thought was kind of interesting. True. So continue. Sorry.
Yeah, Daenerys has a scene where she awkwardly makes Gendry lord of his previous realm and
Stormland.
Yeah, the Stormlands.
Nick, help us out.
Yeah, I believe it's right. He agrees.
All right. What was the question?
Gendry's Lord of Stormlands. Is that right?
Yes, that is where the Baratheons previously called home.
Yes, and Sir Davos saves the day after a kind of a touching but yet very awkward, speech from Daenerys. It's, hey, he did it, and then they start to party, including some drinking game, which might or might not have happened in old times, and a couple of prepositions for fornication. I'm not going to go into that. Gendry has a scene with Arya where he proposes. Yes, we are now a romantic movie as well, I guess, or romantic show. He proposes. She turns him down. Yep. Will she not? No, that's not her.
That's
She's
not me.
No lady. Not that even Gendry knows what a lady's supposed to do. So, I mean, her loss. Arya and the Hound ride south after there's this whole big soap opera deal of, oh, I'm actually a Targaryen. No, you're Jon Snow. No, Bran, tell him.
So
actually,
that scene,
a pretty cool scene.
If I may, I am kind of disappointed they didn't keep that scene going. I thought the first half of this episode in general was really good. They set up a lot of really cool character interactions. And that was one of them where I wish I would have seen how Sansa and Arya reacted to learning that news and, their facial expressions and that kind of thing. And especially even how Bran would explain it. Because we've already heard Sam explain it and we've already heard Jon explain it. I think it'd be really interesting to see how Bran would explain that. And it'd be the same story we've heard before, but I think the way Bran would potentially say it slightly differently and how Arya and Sansa, especially Sansa, would react would be really interesting. Especially because, in 5 minutes after that, Sansa's already betraying Jon Snow's trust on not telling anybody. There's just a straight jump to that. And I wish they should have shown that scene to kind of show her thinking about it and, plotting and kind of figuring out what she wants to do with that info.
My wonder is, does Bran get paid per word that he speaks on screen? Because you don't hear him say anything. Honestly, he said a full sentence about his chair, which, I mean, you sit in a 120-year-old chair all day. You're probably pretty stoked about it.
There's a lot of memes about
the only thing he said.
There's a lot of memes online on how Bran is just. That's what he was doing the entire war episode of Winterfell. He was just plotting and figuring out how to design his chair, so that's what you're using your powers for, figuring out how to build yourself a wheelchair. Come on, Bran.
It's just one of those things where it's there's absolutely zero substance to this character, and it makes it tough because why did he know he's going to be bait? And they're refusing to go into it, and I find that to be frustrating. They could have maybe made up for it by telling him the scene where he shares his revelations with the like you were talking about, shares revelations with the sisters, but no. Well, anyway, so after they have these scenes, the Hound and Brienne get together and some of the most awkward whatever that they did. Tormund gets left home. Everyone goes their separate ways. Ghost, our favorite puppy, gets relegated up to the wall again.
Hold on, if I may, the Hound and Brienne?
I meant Jamie. I meant Jamie. Sorry. That would be a better match, but definitely Jamie. That is, I was thinking about the Hound because him and Arya went south, and I was going to say that at some point. And I did right there. So, yeah, anyway, the one thing I did like about this episode is we're still in Winterfell, and it seemed like quite a bit did happen based off of my kind of long-winded explanation. But at the same time, nothing really happened besides people went their own ways. Sam left to go who knows where, because why do we have, he's a minor character. Why do we have to tell him where Sam's actually going? Jorah's dead, so he didn't go anywhere. And then,
What?
yeah, I don't know. I was just
Brent, are you
thinking of other
forgetting the
minor
storyline at this
characters.
point?
Nope, I'm not,
Okay.
because they go south. They make this stupid plan of, hey, we're going to take our boats to the Dragonstone because we need to be at Dragonstone for some reason. They don't. Spoiler. And Jon and Davos are taking the Northern Army down the road the old-fashioned way.
They also, you skipped a very major part, especially for Nick, is that John's just like, whatever, Ghost, peace out.
No,
Like,
I did mention it, but
that was
it hurts.
so weak. Like, that can't be it for
Yeah.
him. If that is it for Ghost, Nick will punch his TV.
He's probably not even gonna watch Lost after that. I mean, it was pretty disgraceful. I love the memes that we've been seeing online of he can't even pet his dog a couple of times. But it's not a dog, it is a dire wolf, and wolves are not pets. That's one thing that we need to remember is you don't treat them like you would your lovely little pet at home, your furry friend. Anyway, they go south in, I think, a shocking scene for many different reasons. Daenerys loses Rhaegal. I mispronounced that, I apologize. Her weak, wounded dragon to a trap by Euron. And if this was a trap, it was effective, but really stupid. I mean, she was on a dragon. She can't see ships. Everybody hates that scene. They have the most overpowered, what are those, ballista of all time. Basically cannons that shoot out things with very quick reload time.
And accuracy.
I mean, it basically took down a ship, which
This
I
is
think
like
they showed that. I think they showed that, one, to destroy the fleet, but two, just to show that, yes, this could take down a dragon. It can take down this ship. They're trying to show that's not regular ballista. A lot of people were put off by it, but I get where they're trying to show.
Oh, they show them nailing the first dragon 3 times in, like, number one, Daenerys should have seen that. Like, they kind of played it like she was going around the edge of the cliff, the mountain or whatever. But even with that, there's no way those ships see her first and then aim, have the guns all prepped and already aiming exactly where she is without her seeing them. Like, there's just no way they have that many guns ready that fast from seeing her. And it's like, yeah, they shoot the first one so fast, that dragon takes 3 or 4 instantly.
Boom,
and then,
boom, boom,
and then
the
she just
one.
charges them and then dodges an entire volley. Like, okay. Like, it was at that point in the episode where Game of Thrones lost me. And depending on next episode, that might have officially lost me a little bit from especially this last season of Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah. It was just a plot device to get rid of a dragon. And they had to get rid of one, so more power to them. No dragon will survive till the end anyway, so it is what it is. They then decide Tyrion and Varys have some of the worst dialogue they've had in probably the entire show, where they chat about how the queen's going mad, and basically Varys is talking open treason in the throne room of Dragonstone without whispering it, without any sort of fear of retribution or being overheard. Just, I mean, I guess you want
Danny
the audience
said-
to hear
so-
it, but
Was the scene where Varys said his complaints or, expressed his complaints right before that or after that?
I think it was right before where he's like,
Because
looking
like
in the
that kind of makes sense where he's like, I told you I'd look at you in the eye and tell you if I think you're making a mistake. I think you're making a mistake. And then she completely ignores him. I could see him then doubting, that being the trigger for him to doubt his allegiance. But Daenerys also said, like, if you betray me, my dragons are burning you alive. So
True.
that's the
Yeah.
thing. And she's
Real life
not,
fear.
she's all for burning people alive.
They then follow Tyrion's plan of talking reason to the one person on Game of Thrones you can't talk reason to, Cersei, who has more bows and ballista than I've seen in any of the episodes. I think more than even Ramsay had, pointed at Daenerys. Everything could have been avoided if they would have just released the arrows. Instead, we get a not terribly inspiring plea from Tyrion. He survives somehow. He should not have. Maybe they'll still come on in the next episode, but I doubt it. But the frizzy-haired girl or curly-haired girl does not, which makes everyone upset besides the audience, who didn't really remember who she was to begin with, if I remember correctly. And that's pretty much the episode. There's another scene with Jaime and Tyrion and Bronn that I didn't talk about. Didn't do too much for me, other than it just shows that we're not going to see Bronn, one of the better characters in Game of Thrones, for a significant period of time. Go at it.
That was a pretty good recap. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I felt differently about. Mainly the big thing for me was the bodies in the first scene. I was just like, well, that's not even close to the number of people that were actually killed in that battle. You brought up that they couldn't buy cadavers for that scene. And I was like, is that really, like, is that a thing? Are they
like mannequins, probably just mannequins. I doubt they'd actually have real dead people. That was a misspeak. Probably mannequins is what I meant. Or
either way, I think you could film it. Either way, I think you could film one from a bunch of different angles and just CGI that.
Yeah,
as many times as you need to give the effect.
I was gonna say, no offense, but you're making crap up. You don't know what their process was, and ultimately what it comes down to is they did a horse shit job. If you guys are ready for me to jump,
I'm so ready.
Wait.
Nick, can you start though? Can you start with the cup, the coffee cup?
Yeah, yeah. That kind of epitomizes
I forgot about that. Yeah,
we're ready. We're ready.
So if I may, I'll dive in on this episode. And before I dive in, I will blatantly state that I am past the point of believing that this season will be, which is a sad place to be. I've been holding on, and the first two episodes, okay, more of the same crap from last season. You get season 3, episode 3, the Battle for Winterfell. Lots of visually stunning things happened, but I think that based on how it was shown by the directors, we can make some assumptions here, some agreements. Died, except for the main characters, magically, and the Crips. Outside of those few exceptions, everyone in Winterfell died in that episode. That was what they showed us. There were so many bodies, and it makes sense because the Night King's army was 100,000 plus. The biggest, best army the North has ever had, magically, of course, because of Daenerys, all there. And all of it was overrun.
Instantly.
Sorry, go ahead.
Pretty much instantly. Sorry, is the only thing I was throwing in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is, the way they presented this story was so poor in comparison or with regards to the plot. Was it stunning? Yes. Was it entertaining? Yes. But if I could look
now,
them in
this
the
episode, we talked a lot about last episode. We talked a lot about the last episode. So let's talk about this episode.
Okay, if you'll let me English, I'll get it taken care of. I promise. What you showed us is everyone getting decimated. And then you open up with these funeral pyres. Wonderful. Yep, we've got all the bodies cleaned up. That had to have taken somewhere over 3 years, I would guess. But sure, all these bodies are here, and you've got, I think somewhere between 3 and 6 bodies on top of all of these pyres. And I'm sitting here, I think I legitimately asked Megan, there have to be bodies built into every one of those pyres to pretend that all the bodies from the Army of the Dead and the people who are dead are there. And then to turn around at the
And
War
light it on
Council
fire
meeting-
that fast? Oh.
that too, definitely. But then to turn around at the War Council and say, oh yeah, we lost half. I'm sorry, what?
The entire Dothraki
Half?
alone should be a third.
All the Dothraki should be gone. All the Unsullied were holding off the retreat. I mean, maybe you could argue a small platoon of Unsullied made it back while the rest of them held off the assault. But for you to then turn around and say half of the armies survived was a joke. As the politics and everything that's going on, you could argue it was a savvy move by Daenerys to make Gendry the Lord of Storm's End. I think that was a savvy political move and something that was going to happen. I hope it wasn't just fan service, but I'm going to step back for just a moment regarding this episode. I watch a lot of other podcasts that are huge into Game of Thrones who follow it, and in my stream of regular podcasts that I watch that break down the episodes and explain the decision making, I was presented in the last 2 weeks with a podcast that essentially refers to Dave and Dave, the producers and showrunners, and I had to click on it. I'm just like, I am so upset with this show for so many reasons, and I on my pulpit here, preaching about how bad things are, and I hope things get better, and how they're doing things isn't right, and they're ruining characters. The place I've reached here is that this is one version or telling of a story, and frankly, the story is no longer worth listening to. It's still, because I have the love of the initial story that George R.R. Martin wrote, I will watch the other episodes. I will see it through to their version of the end, but I have to go back to the books because this is so sloppily thrown together. And what we started with earlier was mention of a coffee cup. Now, this is blown out of proportion on the internet, but at the same time, it's not. Your storytelling is absolute garbage. Your scenes don't make sense. You have time warping left and right, which, okay, you can accept from last season. This is the new standard, but it's so sloppy. It's so thrown together. You have brilliant characters like Tyrion Lannister.
I was going to say, the actors alone, like, the actors are still amazing. They're just not given stuff to work with.
They're being told what to do, and they do the best they can with what they're given. I don't blame the actors. It's not going to say, why am I Tyrion Lannister walking up to the wall that's controlled by my sister who hates me and wants me dead more than anything else in the world? In what world of this story does she not say
fire?
What advantage would she ever claim is had by not killing Tyrion right there and then?
Right, and I think, honestly, I thought for sure he was done there, because it almost sets up perfectly, because he's been making stupider and stupider decisions. He walks straight up to the wall trying to plead with Cersei, which he's already done in King's Landing, and it didn't work. Like, he deserved to die there from just pure stupidity alone, much less the whole, mirroring previous scenes. Like,
the only thing
he should have been shot.
Is he maybe had leverage in the first part because Daenerys still had 3 dragons, or two dragons at that point. She had her full forces and she had 2 dragons. Daenerys was the stronger. If she were to instigate by killing Tyrion, which she could have done, certainly.
She only had 1 dragon at that point.
Yeah.
That was Rhaegal. That was before they went north. The first time Tyrion went to plead with her.
Oh, the first time. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Right. So at that point, you could maybe argue that, okay, Cersei is incentivized not to kill Tyrion out of respect of Daenerys' force. That's not the case now. Sitting there with a part of what's left of their troops after they got decimated at sea, and they decide to go talk to her at the wall. if she has any mounted cavalry, run their rear ends out there and slaughter them all. And hey, guess that's over.
Game over.
Cool rebellion.
If I may, it could be that Cersei's just doing some like flex of, I know I have you beat. I'm gonna let you guys live because
no, it's just horseshit, right?
You guys like that's the only way you can adjust it.
That's just it. I'm done trying to justify it. And the next scene I'll bring up there is the ambush, quote unquote. You have two dragons who are flying above you in an aquatic a sea region. You can see for miles. Like Kyle stated earlier, I believe there is no scenario in hell, densest fog you've ever seen, which they didn't bother to do that. It
was a beautiful day out.
Dragons don't get ambushed. And then, I mean, again, horrible writing.
Well, I think if I may real quick.
Regal.
Right. In one of the previous, I forgot if it was in the books or previously in the show, but they're like, only one dragon has ever actually been taken out of the sky by man. Otherwise, it's always been like dragon on dragon.
And then for them to have the first 3 shots from a further distance peg Rhaegal perfectly. And
target him instead of Daenerys?
That's just horseshit writing. And then, okay, Daenerys is upset. Okay, that would be a logical response to this stupid situation. So she goes flying in, and then more ships, I think I counted at least 8 or more shots, the ones that just pegged Rhaegal perfectly, are then flung at Daenerys, and you're going to claim...
much closer range.
Even nicked Drogon. Brent, no matter what, that's horseshit writing.
Oh, absolutely. It's plot armor. It's all plot armor.
Yes, that is the exact term. Perfect. You're right on. And Daenerys has it, and Jon has it, and all these characters who are moving through, they're never in actual danger. And I've listened to these podcasts.
It's literally turned into a soap opera, because if somebody's popular, they want to keep them on the soap opera. And so they'll change the story just to keep that person because everybody likes them. That's exactly what's happening with Game of Thrones right now.
And at the same time, they're trying to hold on to the roots of what the show was good for, and they're trying to have surprises. Oh, you didn't know that they were going to get ambushed. You didn't see that coming. # Game of Thrones. Like, it's just like 2 children are at the steering wheel here and like, oh yeah, we're due for a surprise. How about the dragons who can see for miles around? Don't see this coming. And of course, Daenerys gets away in all these other situations. But these videos exist that break down how bad this show's gotten. And this coffee cup is a meme or an internet story or whatever. It's just a prime example of, okay, this show was
2 years. 2 years for this season.
Budget has the biggest budget of any TV show ever in the history of TV, as far as I know. And if it's not number 1, Ivan, I'm sorry, but it's so much money, it's disgusting. And yes, they want to use it on CGI, but to have these kinds of errors shows, okay, we're off book. We don't have to take this too seriously. We've got our plan of attack. Let's run through it and go. And everything that made the show great, all the little details, all the little subtle looks between the characters. And it's not the actor's fault. It's not like they're not able to portray it. They've done it for 5 and 6 seasons already before they got off of the material.
7 seasons, you might say.
It's just, it doesn't exist. Well, it's the 7th.
If I may, I blame George R.R. Martin.
Being too good.
Well, he's really great, and he's set a level that's, I don't think he can even match it again. Like, I guarantee people are going to read.
He can, though. He's taking years and years to write his next book.
Like, when was the first one released? Like 98 or something like that?
Before that, I think.
Yeah, it was.
The shows are so hyped up though that, like, obviously everything is going to be overanalyzed, and that's definitely
evidently
fine.
Not, because they've got a effing coffee cup.
No, by us, the fans, and I feel like the books are going to be the exact same way. Those books are going to be overanalyzed, and there's not a perfect way to finish. That's why he hasn't finished yet. There's no perfect way for him to finish it.
If you thought we were overanalyzing because we thought a character should do something different, okay.
No, it's because we have these expectations that
it's just shitty writing.
They're not good enough.
Shitty writing.
because
they're not good. They're not good. Period.
There's nobody else that's good enough.
If I may, real quick, it's the difference between before when it was something crazy would happen, you'd be like, okay, like what's going on here? And right now, something crazy will happen, and you'll be like, okay,
what is this?
Like,
it doesn't make sense. There's no
the show writers couldn't do it because J.R.R. Martin has done it. Like if George can't do it yet,
I
can these guys be trusted to do it?
There is a slight point there in the sense that they don't have the true material to work off of. They're now like George R. R. Martin is the mastermind, right? But if you have other guys trying to be that mastermind, basically the two director, the D&D, they are trying their best to emulate that. And they know the general storyline. They just don't have the ability that George R. R. Martin does to create those kind of in-depth, intertwining things. Could they do better, or could they have done better?
They definitely could do better.
They could have, but to be fair to them, they're not the masterminds. They know how to direct and show a scene. They don't know how to make up a scene properly.
See, hold on. I'm gonna poke one hole in that, if I may.
Yes.
If it were one or the other, I would be totally on board. And I think your statement there, Kyle, if I can misquote it or correct me if I'm horribly off, but you're saying they can either, write it or they can direct it. And directing is the process of showing what's supposed to happen. They're not doing either of those. Their writing is horseshit.
No, I guess I'm saying like
they are showing their CGI battles
their ability to show the story is good. Their ability to make the story themselves is not good.
Again, showing the story. I just said about the Battle of Winterfell. Everyone was dead. That's what they showed us.
But they wrote the story wrong. But think about that was their writing. But think about the first 4 seasons when they had source material.
Well, it wasn't the writing. The writing says half the people survived. What they showed was everybody was effing dead.
And that's they're not
doing either job to correct. If they were doing one or the other, I'm totally on board. If they were good directors, they could take a story, whether it's horseshit or not, and make it.
When did they come in on the seasons?
To that story.
When did they come in on the seasons? Were they from the start, or what season did they come in?
From the start. It was them from the very start.
So they're good. That's the other thing. To Brent's point, there's proof that they can pull it off when they have the material behind it. It's when they're getting to this making the material themselves where it all went to heck. Maybe they have to spend extra time making the material and then writing it as well, and so they're literally just crunched for more time, so they're not as good as they were before. But yeah,
well, they shit the bed by only having 6 episodes.
We have proof that their previous work is really good and their current work sucks. And the main thing that's different is the lack of material.
It is, though. They showed the writing. What Kyle's saying is that the writing...
We have seen what they have produced and directed before, and we see what it is now. Their directing ability was amazing in the past. We loved Game of Thrones. Now, we don't like it. The only thing that's changed between then and now is George R. R. Martin's material is not there for them to use.
Yeah, but it's not my only point. My only counterpoint to that, and I'll drop it because we can go on for too long with this. But
for sure.
My only counterpoint to that, and certainly give a counter if you feel necessary. My only counterpoint to that is they're not the only ones who had the material, could read the books and understand what's happening. Every person on set who's making it happen outside of the actual director understands the micro picture, in the micro and the macro, because it's all on the pages. Everyone can read it and understand it. Yes, they oversaw it, but based on their work in the last 2 seasons, I don't even think I can give them credit for those earlier seasons.
Because they did not have the material. I don't...
Yeah, we're arguing semantics at this point. I think you both have valid ideas with that. Once it started to be rushed, everything's rushed and condensed, and you don't have time for the scenes that they choose to elongate, like the party scenes, are uninspiring, and the other stuff like that should be developed doesn't have time to develop. And I think that's where we're losing a lot of the writing. Is just rushed and crunched, and a lot of the important stuff, like I want to know what happens to John on his journey down south. Does he pick up more people? Does he meet up with Nymeria? What are Arya and the Hound doing? That's the kind of stuff that we saw in the earlier seasons, and there just isn't time for it anymore. And that is one of the saddest things. This is 10 episodes, 12 episodes like it should be. We should have gotten a better story, but we're getting cheated out of it. And that's why Game of Thrones conclusion is going to end up being probably one of the biggest disappointments.
If I may, I think they almost should have done the end of the White Walker thing, the very last episode of last season. Like, that's when they should have wrapped up that arc and had this last season be after that. And I think that would have shown a lot more, like, I think people would be more understanding of that. Like, hey, the big thing's over. This is literally an epilogue just for us. Like, the main story's over. This season's for us, right? But instead, they try to incorporate them both into it, and it's just, we don't know what the end is. There's no definitive end. It was supposed to be the White Walkers. The White Walkers were it since season 1, episode 1, scene 1, and they weren't. They're not the final boss.
Yeah. I think the thing that I'm going to do, and the only way is, and I actually enjoyed last episode because I chose not to compare it to the first 4 seasons. And I understand that it's just not ever going to be Game of Thrones. It's this universe's Game of Thrones that we're stuck in. And if you just take it for an entertaining hour, I was happy with. If I think of it as the official ending of Game of Thrones and how everything that led up to it was, very disappointing. But as not thinking about it TV, they're doing all right with it. But that being said, that's not what Game of Thrones, that's not what made it special. So, you know, I'm just going to choose to try and enjoy it. And I do like them. I mean, they're visually stunning. The characters, you grow to love them, even if they're not quite the same as they used to be. And
I would argue
a lot can happen.
I would argue you don't grow to love them. In fact, through no fault of the actors in any way, shape, or form, what happens to any of the characters, because I'm so disengaged from the story. Not just because I'm spiteful about how they're doing it, which I am, but because this show is turned into such a joke, meaning, and to Kyle's point, the big bad of the whole story was supposed to be the North, the White Walkers. In one episode wrapped up, yep, we got it. And oh, by the way, all the dead, yep, they're burned right away at the next episode. Moving on. I get the show is supposed to be about the political drama, but I just care, and based on the online community of super fans who are creators and consumers of crazy level related to all that is Game of Thrones, I'm not the only one. A lot of people are horribly miffed, and a lot of people are also doing what you're doing, which is trying to just appreciate it for what it is. No, you can't justify it.
No, that's true. Just giving
but you just appreciate it for what it is, and wait for the books to come out and hope that Martin's able to, put the finishing touches on his masterpiece, essentially. But I'll watch it. Yeah, I know I'll be there for the next 3 Sunday or 2?
2. Oh my gosh.
2
more
episodes. 2 Sundays. I will certainly be there. I will be watching, but
expectations have dropped.
Like I can't say that I'm excited to watch anymore, which is crushing. As a super fan, I have spent so much time listening to creators, reading, watching the show. I think before every season, I rewatched every other season because I've enjoyed it so much. And to reach this point, the historical seasons for what they are, but to reach this point is quite depressing, frankly. So
I think I got a quick thing, a little homage to Ghost here, and then Brent, you want to wrap us up for this episode?
My best.
This is why Ghost is the secret MVP of Westeros. This is my sources Reddit. Fought in the Battle of Castle Black and against the White Walker army. He guarded Jon Snow's corpse so he could be resurrected. He saved Sam's life. Sam went on to save Jorah, who went on to in turn to save Daenerys. He never got shot by easily avoidable harpoons or arrows, unlike other pets. And he's a very good boy who always tries his best.
That's why
Ghost.
my dog is named Ghost.
Horror went out for Ghost, who's still alive, actually, which is a happy ending for Ghost. All right, so that was the latest episode 47 of If I May. We hope you enjoyed. Thanks for sticking around with us through those spoilers. We'll get to you a new episode next Thursday. Thank you again for all of your support. Merchandise is still available at the store. Subscribe for interesting content. Share, rate, and review is always appreciated. If you want to get in contact with us, you have ideas for topics you want us to hear, we'd love to discuss it. Just send us a DM on Twitter at Zarobust. We hope you have a great Thursday, and we will be with you next week. See you.